Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another random review film of the year edition. Today, new film of the year for me is from 1979, 1980, and it's The Savage Hunt of King STAKH. This is a release by Deaf Crocodile, one of my favourite Vinegar Syndrome partner labels. This is number 24. This is the deluxe edition. There's also a deluxe edition and a standard Blu-ray. So this has a lovely stiff cardboard box, because we all love cardboard. And then a lovely book with images from the film. And one of the reasons this is my favourite film of the year now is the imagery in this film, which is absolutely gorgeous. One of the most beautiful films I've ever seen, and it is of course slightly mad as well, which always helps. So here's actually the standard normal looking Blu-ray case. So it's 126 minutes from 1980 officially, in Russian with English subtitles, but it's set in Belarus in 1900, turn of the century. This is a brand new restoration, the director's cut of the film by Craig Rogers for Deaf Crocodile. There's a commentary track by comic artist and author Stephen R. Bissett. There's a new commentary track by Mike White of the Projection Booth. The Wild Wild Hunt of King STAKH is a new video essay by film historian Evan Chester, which is awesome. Video introduction by filmmaker and author Keir Lajeunesse, of Woodland's Darkened Days Bewitched, a history of folk horror, and again, stunning art. This is a region A, and inside there's the disc, and I'll just show you some of there's a couple of cards. There's a commemorative Deaf Crocodile coin for the Wild Hunt of King STAKH. Of course I bought this version to support Deaf Crocodile. How many of these cards can I actually show you? I suppose I can show you some of the cards, and that will give you an idea of the visual style. There's a character who's obsessed with holding a big black cock. I mean, look at this. It's shot in that it's somewhere between colour and black and white. It's that kind of browny, foggy, dreamy. I mean, look at that scene. That shot. It's all feathers. It's an absolutely stunning film. Watch it on a screen as big as possible. I mean, I know Deaf Crocodile releases, certainly for getting them into the UK, are pretty expensive, but this one is an absolute stunner. So blah de blah de blah, what's it actually about? It's part mystery, part folk horror, I guess. It's based on a book which is far more political and romantic, apparently, than the film. But the film still has a certain amount of political underpinnings to it. Belarus was kind of a bit late in being brought in by the Russian Empire, and very much like that north-south Italy divide, north-south English divide, or north-south Spanish divide. Belarus has always kind of been looked down on, and their people are kind of been looked at as peasants and not educated. So the film is about aristocrats against the peasants. It's about superstition and myths and legends, and religion coming into the new century, where the steam and electricity and atheism. So it's about that, as well as this gorgeous, ravishing film about a cursed family. I don't think I've actually said who it's directed by. It's directed by Valery Rubinchik, who doesn't have a huge filmography, but I'll definitely be trying to see more of his films. So this guy from the city, again, it's one of those character from the city, goes out into the countryside to look at strange goings on. He comes from the city. He's a professor, and he's fascinated about myths and legends, again in this age of burgeoning technology. And obviously he poo-poos superstition and vampires and werewolves. If you think of Night of the Demon with Dana Andrews, this guy's essentially the Dana Andrews character, if you will. And he comes across this estate, this big house, where everybody seems a little bit odd, including the lady of the house, who believes she's going to be killed by King STAKH and his wild hunt. Obviously the story and kind of myth of the wild hunt is an old tale that's been told many times. Obviously even Witcher 3 video games called The Wild Hunt. So King STAKH was kind of in favour of, or the peasants kind of revolting, master the peasants and revolting. Well, they should go and take a bath. And her ancestor betrayed King STAKH and took him out to the woods during a hunt and killed him and betrayed him and murdered him. And as he was dying, he said he's going to curse all his descendants. I mean, it's happened to all of us. And she is the last of the line. There's an estate manager who lives there, but this house is absolutely gorgeous, but fairly deserted. And there's a few relatives and neighbours who would gain the estate if something happens to this woman, including a neighbour who is the lady who's obsessed with her black cock, and who's possibly not sane, and her kind of manservant. And as this writer from the city stays longer, obviously he starts seeing things as well. And just to add to that, people start being murdered. They hear the sounds of hooves, they hear the sound of footsteps, and then people start dying. And then is this the possibility that King STAKH and his wild hunt are actually real? As the evidence mounts up, he goes to officials and police who don't seem to obviously take it seriously and want to kind of cover it up and not really don't seem that bothered about finding out who actually killed these people. Obviously not going to tell you who gets killed. It's an absolute stunning film. It's not quite slow cinema, but it's more deliberate cinema. There's not a lot of action set pieces. It is more about the image, and it has that kind of Russian misery and Russian philosophy, Russian melancholy, that just makes it absolutely riveting. You could almost argue 126 minutes is too short, even though obviously mainstream audiences would say, oh, nothing much happens, but it's just so gorgeous. I mean, there's a blindfold duel that is just beautiful. Obviously the widow and her black cock and little chicks. There's a beautiful scene of 3 trees. So it's marshland that kind of King STAKH is seen on. It's very much like the film with Peter Cushing and the Bad Pirates, that for some reason I can't remember its name. But there's a beautiful shot of 3 trees, and one of them just slowly falls over, and it's like one of the greatest things in cinema history, even though it's literally a tree just falling over, but there's something about it. The crime scene photos, obviously it's an oldie worldy camera, but the crime scene shots with the kind of fog are just unbelievable. It's a film that actually uses slow motion properly. It actually uses slow motion, beautifully and usefully, and with a purpose. How many films do you see they just use slow motion for no real reason? It's just slapdash and let's have a bit of slow motion because it looks cool or whatever. But this film actually uses slow motion properly. It's very painterly, but again, it's not painterly in a kind of beautiful colours, because again, it's kind of muted colours. There's lots of fog going on. It is kind of marshland. Again, I can't seem to remember the names of references at the moment, but that painting of the man standing kind of in a mountainy region and kind of looking over a vista, that reminds me of that painting. Apologies because I can't even remember who painted it. But it's just a world that you immerse yourself in. You're pretty much in the place of the protagonist. You're immersed in this strange, odd world as he is. The director shoots lots of things, lots of scenes with our views obscured by something. So it does have this feeling of there's something strange going on. We don't see too many clear images, especially inside the house. There's always a chair in the way of somebody's face partially, or so it's very voyeuristic. At one point, as you can see in one of the images that I've put up, I could have put up about 50 images from the film, it's that beautiful. of the characters will just have a conversation, and she just turns around and looks through the chair at the camera. So there's a voyeuristic, there's a claustrophobic feeling, and because there's things sometimes obscuring your view, or just it's shot over people's shoulders, so there's still part of somebody in the shot when you're looking at somebody else. It just has that voyeuristic, claustrophobic, slightly strange, slightly odd feel. There's a beautifully creepy puppet show where, very much like Hamlet, the events in the puppet show are reflecting the events going on in reality. There's a bit of Hound of the Baskervilles, there's a bit kind of Hammer horror, folk horror. It's apparently not as political as the book, but obviously again it's about landowners and peasants, for want of a better word. And again, 1900 is allegedly just when Belarus was kind of accepted into the Russian Empire. So there's kind of political stuff going on underneath. It's a bit haves and have-nots. You know, the woman of the house doesn't actually do much. She's just living off her money. Obviously, she's obsessed with being killed by Dr. STAKH. That's a different film. That's a sequel with Vincent Price. King STAKH. And then, she tells stories of all the descendants that have died in curious and strange ways. Again, it's obviously less colourful than the Roger Corman Poe films, mostly with Vincent Price. But again, it has that kind of feel. This is a world that the characters are trapped in, and they can't seem to escape. There's obviously that Russian depression and fatalism. Obviously, as I said, it's the familiar trope of an outsider coming in, trying to debunk all this silliness, and of course gets involved with it. But it's just a absolutely stunning film. I know Deaf Crocodile have went a little bit animated films heavy recently, but again their next release, which again they've released a deluxe version of, which of course I've pre-ordered to support Deaf Crocodile, is another crazy Czech film which I'll certainly be looking for. I guess Adele hasn't had her supper yet, but this one is an absolute stunner, and it's my new film of the year. It is absolutely beautiful, but again, as I said, it's not in that Technicolor. It's that foggy, it's like off-colour way, an atmosphere that is just dripping off the screen. The two women in the film, both the head of the house and the slightly crazy one, are both like riveting. It's just pretty amazing. So, I mean, as I said, I know Deaf Crocodile are expensive. I mean, sometimes you can get slightly cheaper ones on eBay, especially if you just go with the standard edition. And I know my opinion is certainly not fact, but I would, if you haven't bought any Deaf Crocodiles, Blu-rays, I mean, not actual Deaf Crocodiles, I would highly recommend starting with the Savage Hunt of King STAKH, because it's, if you're used to, art house cinema, slow-ish cinema, again, this isn't slow cinema, let me make that clear, but it's slow-ish cinema. I would say it's medium slow cinema, but there's shots in it and sequences in it that will just make you fall to your knees and thank goodness for cinema. This is another perfect example of why I blind buy. I mean, there's lots of YouTube channels that say, they don't blind buy, they only buy films that they've seen, which is fair enough. But again, for me, The Savage Hunt of King STAKH is a film I would never have been exposed to without Deaf Crocodile, without physical media. And that's why, as I say, I do buy blind buys, because obviously your own kind of taste. Obviously with labels like Deaf Crocodile, you kind of know what sort of films. Obviously some I prefer than others, but obviously you kind of have an idea of what kind of films Deaf Crocodile release, the same way Radiance and Indicator, etc. But for me, the next film that I watch, the next blind buy, could be one of my favourite films of all time. Now obviously I'm being pretty effusive of King STAKH, but I have just seen it once. I'll have to watch it again. But again, I think it's a film that is open to rewatching, and you'll miss little details, and you can really focus in on the little details. For example, in one of these, never point in the right direction, one of these images, there's a ritual that the woman of the house does, and she's literally in a bed of feathers, and this old woman has given her the ritual to protect her from evil and King STAKH's wild hunt. Again, it's just absolutely gorgeous, but not in a technicolor way, more in that kind of muted, colourful way. Obviously you can't not think of Russian medium slow without thinking about Tarkovsky. So I could be, the worst kind of film reviewer and go, yeah, it's like if Tarkovsky did a Hammer film. That's kind of the vibe of the Savage Hunt of King STAKH. But I wouldn't do that, of course, even though I have done. But I was doing it ironically. So thanks very much for watching my Film of the Year random review. Obviously it changes every few weeks, but this is definitely my Film of the Year now. So thanks very much for watching. Please let me know if you've seen The Savage Hunt of King STAKH, or even the Vincent Price sequel of Dr. STAKH. That's not true, if anybody wants to look up Letterboxd. I don't think that one exists. So thanks very much for watching. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying do yourself a favour and buy a Deaf Crocodile Blu-ray, not an actual Deaf Crocodile, even though Deaf Crocodiles do need love and homes too. Cheerio.